Hey, let's go on a Tunisian stitch pattern reading adventure together. Hi, I'm Ellen Gormley and welcome back to my channel. I know how you guys love Tunisian stitch patterns, and I thought I would pair today's stitch pattern, the tire tread stitch pattern, with reading Tunisian stitch pattern. So here's a Tunisian diagram. Here's the pattern. This is from Robin Chichula's book, Crochet Stitches Visual Encyclopedia. Robin Chichula, love her. I've never worked this particular pattern before, and I thought it would be a good experiment for us to practice learning how to read patterns together. So I have with me this is a cotton yarn. I think it's a Provence by, I forget. Anyway, so it says, the instructions, work off loops as normal. So, and to do that, here's the stitch instruction that we will use throughout the pattern. So yarn over, pull through one loop on the hook, yarn over, pull through two loops on the hook, repeat from star to end. So that's like what we need to know for the whole pattern, but the pattern actually begins with chain an odd number of stitches. And her description of this stitch pattern says, by simply changing the yarn position on each stitch in the row, you produce a gentle geometric texture. So that is what we are after together. This is the picture of the swatch. But really, the pattern is just something that I want to use to teach you a little bit more about Tunisian. So I have an Afghan hook, and I put the yarn on it with a slip knot, and it says chain an odd number of stitches. So let's do that together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a cotton yarn. It's a little splitty. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Should we do 11? Let's do 11. Okay, so that's our odd number of stitches. Then it says row 1, RS means right side. FWD is forward, for forward pass in Tunisian. Pull up a LP loop in the second chain from the HK hook and in each chain across. Okay, and then period. So we're going to stop there and just do this part. So pull up a loop in the second chain from the hook. So here with my thumb, I'm pointing on the first one. Here's the second one. I like to do the back bar, back ridge, back loop, whatever you want to call it. So pull up a loop, and because it's Tunisian, we leave it there, and it says to pull up a loop in each chain across. So that is what we shall do. Pulling up a loop in each chain across. Oop, I split the yarn, so I'll go back and make sure I get all the plies of the yarn. And I did it again. So this yarn is a little splitty. It's kind of loosely spun, so it looks like that is going to be a characteristic of this particular yarn. Okay, so the rest of the instruction says RTN, which is return, work off loops as normal. So we're going to go back and do this again. So every time we see work off loops as normal, we're going to go back up here and read this instruction, and that's what we'll use over and over again. So yarn over, okay, yarn over, pull through one loop on hook. So we will do that, pull through one loop on the hook. Then it says there's a star there, we'll pay attention to that. Yarn over and pull through two loops on the hook. So yarn over, pull through 1, 2 loops on the hook. And then it says repeat from the star to the end. So now we're going to go back to the star and say yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook. And after we've done that, we're now again at repeat from star. So we're going to keep going back to the star every time we're done. So yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook. And then it says repeat from star. So yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook. And we will do that to the end because that's what it says to do, to the end. All right. So that completes row 1. So now row 2, the forward pass, meaning when we load up our hook with loops. Forward pass in parentheses, it says loop on hook counts as first chain. So, okay, that's a little first stitch. So that's a little bit of an instruction that tells us that this first loop on the hook counts as the first stitch. Then it says TPS in next stitch. So I guess I should show you the diagram as well while we're going. I forgot about the diagram. So on the diagram here, I didn't even count them, but let's see, let's count the ovals. That's the number of beginning chains that she did for this diagram. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. How serendipitous is that? I didn't even count. So we chained 11. Then this vertical little line for row 1, the numeral 1 indicates row 1. Vertical lines means we're just pulling up a loop in each chain across, which is what we did for row 1. Then this little squiggly line is the return pass. So we just returned pass by working off loops as normal. Remember that instruction? So row 2 is where we are now. And so we can read this diagram. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to work this way. I'm working from the right to the left. And I'm going to match it up with the word instructions over here. So the loop on the hook counts as first stitch. That's not really demonstrated on the diagram. I mean, it is. It's like this little vertical, this little square, this little rectangle, that is the first stitch. So nothing special about that. It is the first stitch. It's we don't really do anything with it because it's already on the loop, on the hook. Then it says TPS in next stitch. So she is using the horizontal bar here to represent a Tunisian purl stitch. Now that probably is illustrated somewhere in the book where she has a diagram that indicated for this book she is using the horizontal little dash here to represent a Tunisian purl. So we'll Tunisian purl in the next stitch, represented by the diagram. So Tunisian purl, you may have seen on my Tunisian playlist on the channel here that you move the yarn to the front. I'm going to insert the hook, wrap the yarn around the front, and pull up a loop. So if you need to see that closer, then you can look on my Tunisian playlist for the Tunisian purl, but I'll be doing that a few times across this fabric. Now the next stitch, so we have the first 2 stitches done. The next stitch is a Tunisian simple stitch, TSS, in next stitch. So that's represented by the vertical line there. So Tunisian simple is just to insert the hook from right to left under that vertical bar and pull up a loop. And then it says repeat from star across to the end. So that means we are ready to go back here to TPS, which is Tunisian purl. And here on the diagram, there we are, another little horizontal hash mark. So TPS, so bringing that yarn to the front, inserting the hook, wrapping the yarn around the front of the hook, and pulling up a loop, TPS. Then Tunisian simple stitch in the next stitch, and repeat from star across to the end. So go back to the star. Looks like on the diagram visually we can see very clearly, even though I can't say it clearly, very clearly it's just alternating those 2 stitches all the way across. So we're reading across row 2 here. The numeral 2 indicates that that's row 2 that we are reading. So you may be wondering about this gray block, and this gray shading is indicating that that's kind of like, that's the whole repeat. It's just a two stitch repeat all the way across. You could easily have put this gray shading right here or right there. It's just, actually no, just right there, because the last one is always a Tunisian simple stitch because of the function of Tunisian, and we'll get there at the end. So you could, it's just a 2 stitch repeat all the way across the fabric. So let's see here. So we were on a Tunisian simple. I can tell because there's not a yarn wrapped around the front. Like here's a yarn wrapped around the front. That's a Tunisian purl. Here's the Tunisian simple. And we're just alternating that across the fabric because it's said to repeat from the star all the way across. So we're Tunisian purling. We're Tunisian simple stitching. We're Tunisian purling. and it said all the way across to the end, and then the last stitch is always a Tunisian simple stitch. And also, in fact, that's the last stitch we do for the repeat, Tunisian simple stitch in the stitch. So we're ending with that. Those two things we're alternating across. So we should be ending with a Tunisian simple, which is what we're doing. Across to the end. We are now at the end. So at the end, we then RTN, return, work off loops as normal. In case we forgot, we can go up here and read it again. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook, all the way across. And remember that this return pass, return work loops off as normal, is indicated in the stitch diagram by the little tilde, little squiggles at the top. So now we're on row 3. So row 3, we don't even have to read the verbal or word instructions. If we want, we can just look at the diagram. And the diagram indicates that the first stitch on the hook is a simple stitch. And you know what? They want us to do another simple stitch right next to it. So because look, it's making like an offset like brick pattern where we put the Tunisian simple in the purl and then the purl in the simple. Okay. So if we want to read the word instructions, though, to make sure that both sets of instructions match and they're both correct, we'd come over here to row 3. The forward pass, the loop on the hook counts as 1 stitch as the first stitch. Fine, all good. Tunisian simple stitch in the next stitch. So we will do that by pulling up a loop. And then it says TPS, Tunisian Purl in next stitch. So we will do that. Then it says repeat from star across to the last 2 stitches. Okay, so we're going to go back to the star and we're going to keep repeating from the star until we reach the last 2 stitches. So Tunisian simple, Tunisian purl. Tunisian simple, repeating again from the star, Tunisian purl. Tunisian simple, repeating from the star, get myself some more yarn, Tunisian purl. Now I am at the last 2 stitches. There are 2 stitches left, so I know something different is going to happen now because it said until the last 2 stitches. So now that I have 2 stitches left, I've worked across to the last 2 stitches. The final 2 stitches, it says Tunisian simple stitch in last 2 stitches. Now that's not 2 of them together. It's in the last 2 of them. If it were like, so we're going to do one at a time, one and then the other. If you were going to work both of them at the same time, it might say something like at the same time or TSS 2 together. So it's not saying that though. It's saying in the last 2 stitches, and it's a grid. There's no increasing or decreasing, so we know it's a 1-to-1. So 1 stitch goes in 1 stitch. So on the last 2 stitches, she wants us to Tunisian simple stitch in each of them. Tunisian simple stitch, Tunisian simple stitch. Okay, there we go. So at the end of row 2, we are going to return by working off loops as normal. And again, in case you forgot, you can go back up to the instruction, but we're going to yarn over and pull through 1 loop on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook all the way across. All right, and I am going to pause because I can hear the dog, Hobie, in the other room destroying something. So let me pause there. We will come back and do row 4 and 5 and maybe a couple more, and then I'll show you how to bind off and show you what the fabric looks like when we're done. I'm back, and you know what? This is a good time to point out, how do you know how many rows you've done? Now, I know. Do you know? You probably remember, but let's show you how to count. So on the side of the work, you can see the number of loops that look like chains up the right side. 1, 2, 3. We've done 3 rows, and this is like the slip knot down here, or the turning chain. 1, 2, 3. We've done 3 rows in this Tunisian little swatch. So we know we're ready for row 4. So row 4, Oh, look, we got to row 3, and now it says repeat rows 2 and 3 to desired length. So after row 3, we're going to go back to row 2 and do row 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3 as many times as we want to. And then when we're done and we've decided we're done, after a row 3, we will do a final row, the last row. So let's do row 2 and row 3 again, and we'll just keep playing with this fabric here. So just coincidence that I picked yellow yarn for the yellow photo, but okay. Row 2, remember the first loop is on the hook already, and it starts with a Tunisian purl this time. So the even numbered rows are starting with a purl. The odd numbered rows are starting with Tunisian simple stitch. And so now we know that because 2, 3, we're on 4, then we would be on 5, then we'd be on 6, row 6, then we'd be on row 7. So you can see that every even row is going to start with a Tunisian purl, and every odd row is going to start with a Tunisian simple. So if you need to count the number of rows you've done on the side and figure out which row you're on, that will tell you. Hopefully that trick helps. Okay, so I just did a Tunisian simple, so it's time for a purl. Easy peasy. And this is tire tread stitch, and I think maybe I have done this stitch possibly, or something similar to it, when I made a black, you know, you love somebody when you make them something black in crochet, right? I made a black wool scarf for my husband in Tunisian, and I think it was something similar to this. It's one of the few crochet projects that my husband would wear, since he doesn't really love crochet. I don't know why. There's everything to love, nothing to not love. But anyway, so when I made him a Tunisian tire tread scarf out of wool and black, then he would wear it. So there we go. All right, so I can see here, this one is a Tunisian purl because it's got the little horizontal bar across the bottom. This one is a Tunisian simple. There's no horizontal bar across the bottom. So I'm going to simple into the purls and purls into the simples. Got it? I hope you're following along. So if not, go back to the beginning and start again and see if you're going to catch it the next time around. So we are just offsetting like bricks, putting one thing into the other and then the other into the first, so that you're not stacking the exact same stitch on top of itself over and over again like a column. These are offset like bricks. Okay, Tunisian simple, Tunisian purl, Tunisian simple. Remember that one, when you start with a Tunisian simple, we're ending with 2 Tunisian simples. So, and always in this pattern, the final stitch is a Tunisian simple. Okay, this is what it's looking like so far. Kind of pretty, nice little texture. All right, yarn over, pull through 1. The return pass in this pattern is the same every single time. That's convenient. Helps you get in a nice little rhythm where you really can't, I mean, you could stop in the middle of the row and put it down, but why would you? It's just so fun to do the return pass and complete the stitches. So let's do maybe 2 more rows together, and then we will decide how we want to finish off. So now we are on, let's see, let's show you how it's worked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. So this would be a row 6, and a row 6 is an even number. So I'm coming back to the row number 2 because that's an even one, and an even number. So we're going to TPS, Tunisian purl, in the first stitch. Yep, we're right on track. So Tunisian purl. This cotton yarn is a very nice yarn, but it is a little, I would say, stiff. So that's why it's not like filling into the spaces really well. It's, I don't know, just a little stiff for this stitch pattern. Maybe the hook is a little bit big for this yarn, but that's what swatching is all about. We put the hook in, we pick the hook out, and that's what the swatch is about. Anyway, so here we go. Now, like I said before, we could put this down, but why would we? Because we don't want the loops to fall off the hook. But in fact, if you had to, if you made a mistake and needed to go back, you could just remove the hook, Or even easier, go ahead and do the return pass. And then it's easier to rip back out a row if we had made a mistake, which we have not. But if we had made a mistake, it would be easiest to go like this. So at the end of the row, if we realized, oh my goodness, I made a mistake on the last row, what I would do is grab my hook and insert it in that last loop, and then just rip like a wild woman all the way across and all the way back until it got hung up on this last loop. And then I would just start that row again. All right, here we go. So one of the fiddly things about Tunisian, in my opinion, is that often the starting side, for me right-handed, the right side, tends to be a little bit taller than the left. And this is especially true of cotton yarn, because cotton yarn is not real stretchy and not real forgiving. And so if you accidentally pull up a little bit too much on this first beginning loop, that's where you start to get like unevenness on the right. Okay, let's do one more row, shall we? And I've already lost track of where I am, because the older I get, the more ADD I get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're on a row 7, which is an odd number, which means 3 is an odd number. So I need to go do a row 3. Okay, which makes perfect sense, because then after the row 3 start with a Tunisian simple stitch. After the row 3, we can do the final row, or the last row. So Tunisian simple, Tunisian purl, Tunisian simple, Tunisian purl. I'd like to give a shout out to all my new subscribers. Hello, hello. I've got about 100 new subscribers this week. Thank you for joining us. I hope you stay and enjoy the videos. Okay, and a Tunisian simple in the 2 bars on the final stitch. Then we are going to return pass, because we are to complete row 3, we do need to work off the loops as normal. 1, then 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, all the way across. And then let's do a bind off. So this particular pattern, she has told us how she thinks we should bind off or finish off the final row. So let's see, how is this actually binding off? TPS. Okay, so let's read the instructions together and learn, shall we? So she's saying TPS, Tunisian purl, in the next stitch and pull through the loop on the hook. So we leave this loop here. That's the first one. We're going to TPS, Tunisian purl, in the next loop, the next vertical bar, pull up a loop, and it says pull through the loop on the hook. Okay, so it's essentially slip stitching purl-wise. Okay, are you following? So the next stitch says Tunisian simple in the next stitch and pull the loop pull through the loop on the hook. Okay, so Tunisian simple, pull up a loop and pull through the loop on the hook. Okay, then repeat from star to end. So we're going back to the star here, where it says Tunisian purl, pull the loop through and pull through the loop on the hook, and Tunisian simple and pull through the loop on the hook, all the way across to the end. Nothing about last 2 stitches or anything, but just all the way through the end. Can you hear the puppy running in the background? He is getting his wiggles out. Earlier, when I had to pause, he had grabbed a packet of dried mashed potato powder. So had to grab that from him before he punctured it with his little teeth. All right, and pull through. So you're essentially slip stitching purl-wise and Tunisian simple stitch-wise all the way across. So I will just now cut this, thread the cut end through the loop where the hook used to be, and gently pull taut. So here is our finished tire tread stitch, and give you a little bit of a reading diagrams and reading instructions lesson for Tunisian as we went. So here's what the bottom looks like, pretty little V's. Here's what the left side looks like, pretty little V's. The right side is loose and sloppy V's because I did it loose and sloppy and because it's cotton. Cotton is rough to keep it all uniform. The top is pretty little V's, and you probably want to know what the back looks like. Also pretty, nice little texture. Looks kind of like the back of stockinette or garter, kind of like that, kind of nubby. Nice. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss the next tutorial that's coming up. And thanks so much. Take care. Bye.